Hello everyone, welcome to Satsang. For those who are not aware, we use Satsang. We use WhatsApp as a means of communication. So if you have any questions, you can send them directly to me. Let's make some silence first. Empty of everything. Nothing exists. Nothing has importance enough to occupy that mental space. Just void. Just preserving that void. Okay. So I hear a lot of quotings here of Ramana Maharshi's teachings, kindly supporting a certain vision of the spiritual path. And for today, I will bring a little bit of the story of Ramana Maharshi, of his life. Not an expert, just what is there available, but to bring that as uh, another outlook, because that is also a part of his teachings. A master lives the life of the previous life before of awakening as also a teaching. And let's look at it in a more simple way, maybe not the way that those want to give an impression of what he was, uh, but let us look at the story in a more simple way. So he was a normal person, having a normal life. Uh, he was educated, was going to school, and he had a promising life ahead of him because of his life conditions, of his social conditions. And eventually, he had a spiritual experience, a mystical experience. Some say that he was already enlightened at that moment, but the story doesn't add up like that. Because if there was instant enlightenment, there wouldn't be any strangeness about the experience or doubts about the experience. There could be maybe awe or laughter about the previous condition. How was it possible to have believed that it was the body and I had this life and all of this? Maybe that, but not strangeness with the experience itself, because awakening, that which reveals itself, it is the normal, the ancient, and that which was there previously. It's so new that it really has no existence whatsoever. So this strangeness to that experience shows otherwise. So um, it is more the probability that it was a mystical experience, and it is common to most seekers. There's a lot of seekers talking about this mystical experience, this experience of oneness. And then, as the story continues, he continued going to school, but started losing interest, and he was reading the stories of the saints and practicing meditation. We can see this by this sentence of his brother, which determine is going away, saying, what is the use of behaving like a yogi and doing the life of a worldly person? So if he was behaving like a yogi, he was in spiritual practices, practicing meditation and all of this. And this Arunachala uh, had come to him as an insight. This is what is called guidance in this case. And he followed it without any idea of what was coming, of what his future would be. He abandoned the worldly life, he abandoned the life of uh, all the dreams of the character, whatever was there in front of him, he abandoned it. So if this enlightenment had already happened fully, what was there to abandon? But he did, and he followed the guidance, not knowing what for and why, but he just went. And as he finally arrived there, uh, they say he didn't go into any formal of initiation, but he did the initiation to himself. He abandoned, he did all those procedures that it is common, and he took the life of a renunciant. And afterwards, 10 years were spent in deep meditation. Some say in samadhi, doesn't matter, because if it is samadhi, it is dissolving the structures of the character, and in silence, which means very powerful energies were circulating and very powerful work was being done. So he spent 10 years in this intensity of spiritual work and emerged as after he was recognized as Ramana Maharshi. And there's a lot of stories that when he was meditating, he was being bitten by mosquitoes and full of wounds, and he was unaware of all of that. He was completely absorbed in the self. And that is intense spiritual practices, very intense. And afterwards, well, well, know more than I do about that, but everything started to grow around him. An ashram was erected after many years, after disciples and devotees started to come and assemble around him, recognize that spiritual power. Some call him a saint, others call him a guru, others call him an avatar, God himself. But look at the story. He didn't stay and live the normal life and whatever. Like, no, there was a beautiful, inspiring story that still inspires hundreds, millions of people, of seekers. Probably they could have a better inspiration, but that is another subject. Still, it is there. And if he hadn't followed that guidance and being completely unaware of what was coming, um, and what was his life would be, and all of that, he just followed the guidance, Arunachala. He went, not knowing, and he never left there because there was this transfer from his worldly life to his spiritual path and to the life that was connected to that spiritual side of this. The previous life belonged to that character. I think the name was Venkataraman. Then, then it was the life of Ramana, and they were different lives. And as he awakened to his spiritual life, then the other life has ceased to be. If it didn't, uh, all the story that unfolded, all the people that gathered around him, all the people that got inspiration, that got guidance, that got everything, and still are getting, it wouldn't be possible, not in that sense. So everything has a purpose. And someone like that, that comes in that way, uh, it doesn't have a story of its own. It is a story to be told to those who come after and see it and get inspiration from it. And if we look these days, the majority of those who follow the teachings of Ramana, it seems that they are not looking at this part of this story, and probably the only thing, the only way they can touch their teachings is through Facebook postings, and that's all. Because the inspiration is there. And in that time, probably, it was a good idea to cut a little bit all these rushed movements, to abandon everything and go like this. But because it was that magic was present, it was real. These days, that is completely dead. Magic has been lost. But the stories are there. The stories are there. And that is the story of someone who had the process became alive, guidance presents itself. He followed guidance, not didn't follow a whim of his mind. Uh, he followed guidance, and then the story is there to be seen. And he became uh, a source of guidance and will continue to be. So there's many times that people get similar guidance, and then because of fears, because of insecurity, because of doubts, because of a lot of things, they don't they don't follow guidance. So they just keep on living the story of that worldly character instead of living the epic of that spiritual character, which is much greater, serves a bigger purpose, and takes you to full realization of who you are. So, without magic, and that is something that has been mostly lost, um, the spiritual path, the spiritual quest is lost. Because it doesn't matter if uh, the story has to be lived in the way that it is supposed to be lived. So, abandoning everything because I believe that is something there that will be, that I will have safety and all of this is meaningless. Usually, guidance doesn't work like this. It gives you a direction, a short one. It points the way. It doesn't give you any explanations. It doesn't give you any assurances. And as you move following this guidance, you will lose all the weaknesses, all the doubts, all the fragilities, everything which is connected to the delusion that you are living. This is one of the opportunities that guidance gives. So, Melinda, so when we awaken to our spiritual life, our other life ends. Well, surely the direction you were looking at the other life, the ideas you were giving, the purposes, everything falls down because it has no sense, absolutely no sense. It's like the world of a blind person and the world of the one who has vision. It has nothing to do, nothing in common. So the life that you are living, it serves the purpose of survival, quest for happiness, and relationships and whatever. It is the goals of a character. What is possible to the one which is living deluded about his own reality, about reality. So after awakening, of course, it changes. Everything changes. If nothing changes around, it loses complete sense. It has uh, no meaning. There's no point in that the way it is. Um, there are exceptions when that is a tool uh, for a spiritual work which is needed, but that is another story. But usually, yes, and uh, for the majority of seekers, there is a distance, a gap mm, uh, from the story of the spiritual, of the worldly seeker and the spiritual seeker. There is this shift where the delusion continues, but this is the part where this circumstances tend to change because his goals have changed. So, if you want to succeed in your business, for example, you intensify your work in that business, you advertise, you work ceaselessly, you prepare, you program, you learn more and more. This is what. But if suddenly you're in the quest for truth and enlightenment, you will stop wasting your time with that and concentrate in meditation, spiritual practices, maintaining your mind completely absorbed into that. So, and these things for that character, they are conflicting. If they are not conflicting, well, probably you're not doing anything, because if you think you're experiencing life as a seeker of truth, but in essence, you're living it as a knower of truth, you're in denial. Because to live in the worldly life, uh, completely concentrate in the spiritual quest, that is for the awakened one, not possible for the others. And it can be possible to maintain that focus only for those who are in the middle of worldly circumstances, forced by guidance, and they are in the middle of changing those circumstances. But these are very few. Others, they are there because of their attachments, weaknesses, and transforming and twisting the teachings to adapt them to their circumstance. But surely after awakening, it doesn't, it it has no sense. So you can say, yes, your other life ends, at least, even if it is the meaning of it. But usually it ends much early than that, much early than that. So Ramana's story is not the average story, but it can be. It can be. If you start believing in that magic, it will come to you and you will be able to live it. Imagine the world full of Ramanas. Is that impossible? Well, today, yes, or what it appears to be. But the story, it is the story of a seeker of truth. It is, because eventually, uh, that is the way it starts. Some kind of experience, some kind of inner quest comes, something that takes attention out of worldly life. And then, depending of attachments of everything that is there, it becomes more or less intense, but it starts to change its direction. And the situation these days, which the world is going through, these are not usual circumstances as they were in that time. Because in that time, the forces of distraction, of delusion, because they are active, they are not just, it's not like most of you imagine. Uh, these days, there is a big intensity of disinformation, of twisting of spiritual teachings, of diverting, corrupting. All of these things are there, very active, very intense. And surrendering to one's weaknesses, attachments, it's even like encouraged. It is encouraged. So this is why this mixing up with these psychological teachings, mixing psychology with yoga and all of this, like they fit, like they could fit together, and they don't. They don't. One is preservation of personal individual identity, restructuring this identity that serves the purpose of being useful in society for worldly purposes. It has nothing to do with transcendence. So for a worldly person to be exposed to spiritual practices without any desire for it or anything like that, that it would go into depression. it wouldn't rise above delusion. Because one is to transcend, the other one is to maintain, to preserve, to crystallize more, to make it more useful, functional to the society. Not to itself, not even to itself, more or less, but to the society at large. It has to function with these values. Uh, so it's not even, maybe it is, in essence, it is for the preservation of that individual according to its needs. But in a gross way, it's not working like that, because the person says, "Oh, I'm not being able to do this work anymore. I don't feel the will to do it." And what is, oh, so take these pills, this will work. The problem is yours, not that this work has nothing to do with you, and you need to find that which is more suitable, that brings you joy. Not that. Just take the pills, that's your problem, and go back to work. So maybe in essence, uh, it is more connected to the preservation of this individual, but still it is conflicting, it is opposing. And the teachings of transcendence, they do not support this individual. So, and we're seeing this this psychology entering these spiritual places, and the seekers being have to preserve themselves, feeling safe, and all of these things. And this is counterproductive. This has nothing to do with transcendental philosophy. So eventually, yes, in that transition, everything you aspired as um a worldly person, it doesn't make sense anymore. So aspirations change. So the investments of your time change also. That is the common. People say, oh, but it's possible to conciliate one and another. Nothing has to change. Theoretically, but like I said previous, that is for the 0.00000000000 and plus some other zeros 1%. And it is for those who are forced by guidance to be there, because that serves other purposes. There is a magic to be lived, and to live it, well, you have to follow the steps. And following guidance is in the way that Ramana did also. Just a destination, somewhere to go, no assurances, no nothing to make him feel safe. Just had to go, and that's it. And has he follow his guidance, established in the life that he was supposed to have, and there he remained until the end, serving his purpose, whatever that means. So imagine every one of you that had the guidance already to do something, to follow your path, to go, and you stopped by fear, and stopped because of safety, because of a lot of things, and didn't trust guidance. Look at what you have lost and what others have lost also. Because it's not just about you. Imagine how many of you have had a guidance similar, for example. Why wouldn't your story be as his story was? If you had the courage, if you had the faith. And some of you may say, oh, but he had that spiritual insight, that uh, self-realization. That is too much because, like I said previously, if that was the case, other things could not arise. And they did. And it doesn't make much sense that way also. But even that mystical experience, that intense mystical experience, um, that experience of oneness, it is quite common, especially these days. It is quite common. Some are fabricated, but okay, but it is common. Still, it doesn't make a difference because when the time comes that guidance points, that experience will not be enough. Because the point is for you to deal with those weaknesses, with those delusions, and embracing magic, guidance. That is the point of it. Because when you're in the middle of that experience, no doubts, nothing is there. But when that disappears, everything comes back to normal. And or you embrace guidance, despite whatever is there, or you remain as you were. But imagine, those of you who have had these callings and have give up because of fear, of attachment, of all these things. Imagine what you have lost just looking at Ramana's story. And also what the world has lost looking at this story. Because, well, by staying as you are, for example, you are inspiring other seekers that know you to stay as you are. Then you are giving them inspiration to live the life that you're living. Huh? So you're depriving yourself and depriving others, and that is a complete loss. Complete loss. For the real warrior, the winning or losing that battle, it's not that important. It is important to have had the best fight. And real warriors, they salute and respect themselves. The winners respect the losers respect the win. There's no losers because if they fought well, they fought the best fight, that is the most important. Spiritual path is the same, more or less. The path also matters. And it is something that it is heart fulfilling to have done it, to have gone through it. And it is drinking the magic. And that's what makes the process alive. So it doesn't matter if you pick up the teachings of Ramana or someone else and use them to justify your inertia, your weaknesses, and just blabbering about these teachings to show others I don't know what. Because those who are supposed to follow Ramana's teachings, they should be the ones that we would not see in internet. They were practicing self-inquiry, right? And eventually it becomes a sadness to yourself as time passes. For things that you may understand with time, and for those things that you don't even know that you're missing because you didn't live, because you got shrinking in fear, in unsafe, waiting for the safety and the circumstances more suitable. And India, for example, holds the traditions of all of this and has preserved it through time. And some of you sometimes go there and watch these renunciants and all of this and bring a lot of criticizing. What is the point of living as a beggar and all of this? Well, that may be true in some cases, but at least they are trying. They are trying. Even if it is just by form, they are keeping the traditions alive. And what are you doing? The magic is available for everyone. Everyone. You just have to reach your cup and take it. Everyone who has a spiritual experience, as Ramana did, as many of you have, for example. And there are many ways of being touched by the divine, many ways. But let's just refer to this one, this experience of oneness, for example. How can you look at life in the same way? Because that was not by merit or something like that. That is a divine call. It's telling you, look, that which you are experiencing and the one who is experiencing, it's not real. Let go of that. Come back. So how can you continue to live the same thing? Being open to guidance, being receptive to guidance, praying for guidance. It is the best path. And then following guidance. Because if you just stick with your logic, you go nowhere. You just continue. It doesn't matter if you're going down the cliff with your eyes open or eyes closed, you're still going down the cliff. And if you're just following your logic, logic is the most deceiving thing, especially when the mind is not an instrument, but it is that which is in control. The mind smiles, the heart bleeds and suffers. Okay. So next satsang will be Wednesday, 10 a.m. UTC -3, so Brazilian time. Till then, if you find yourself in a situation where you're stuck, attached to concepts, but you look around and you see that the life that you're living is not sacred, not divine, it's not really serving your divine purpose, pray for guidance. Pick up the stories of the sages and saints. First, thank for them to be there. Honor their efforts, honor their sacrifices, and take inspiration. May you all find your path.